All right, hello and welcome to this video on installing AlmaLinux 8. Specifically, we'll be installing AlmaLinux 8.3, but you cannot tell by looking at the screen until we get deeper into the installation. So you insert the media or the ISO and you boot off your virtual machine or your physical machine off of the media. In this case, I am using a virtual machine and I have booted it up off of the ISO file loaded from my Windows machine. And what you'll end up seeing is a screen presented with this menu: install AlmaLinux 8, test the media installation, or troubleshooting. In the case of just simply installing, we would just select the first option, install AlmaLinux 8. This is very simple, straightforward installation, no special kernel parameters for any special drivers for any unique devices. So with that, we're going to go ahead and select install AlmaLinux 8 and hit the enter key. This is normal, depending on your particular release of CentOS or AlmaLinux. Again, this video is really about AlmaLinux, but the installation GUI will actually look very similar to what CentOS looks like in terms of what menu options are in what places and what they're called. And in about a moment or two, we should actually end up seeing the initial screen for proceeding with the installation. Yeah, we got a black cursor, and here we are. We're going to choose English for the language of the menu, in English United States as the locality, the specific language of English, which really isn't that big a deal. But if you choose English United Kingdom, you'll see the pound symbol, not the $ symbol for currency, and maybe even for your prompt. So we'll go ahead and choose this. I didn't have to change anything, obviously. We'll select the continue button. Takes about a moment or so, and then we will see the next option with a big installation summary screen. Installation summary here. And then you'll see that you have several options you can modify. I'm going to tweak the screen just a little bit. And actually, I'll put it back just because the tool I'm using to make this video is indicating there's a little bit of a geometry issue. All right, you can change your keyboard. Why do that? I'm English United States, language support, English United States. This is the language support for what the operating system will demonstrate while you're installing. Sorry, not while you're installing, but when you are actually running the operating system. That's what this option here is for. So if you speak French and English and you're in France and you're installing this operating system so that English-speaking users can use the system, the previous screen would have been where you chose French. But I'm American, I'm in the United States, I'm building this machine for use in the United States. So keyboard of English, United States, or US rather, and language support of English, United States is perfectly fine the way it is. The time zone, I'm fine with this time zone, but if you wanted to, you could change it. And you could choose United States, choose the Americas, like that. Or you could probably even choose, ETC for etc. and Greenwich Mean Time. All right. And the way I did that is I just scrolled up on the mouse on my, center scroll button of my mouse, and I could do Coordinated Universal Time. UTC is what those three words stand for. UTC stands for Coordinated Universal Time. All right. Network time, so you can use NTP off the internet. I'm not worried about that. Maybe you are. You would turn that on. And then later on, you would need to go back and configure NTP servers for your own needs off of your own network. This is if you're working off the internet and you don't care about any kinds of time sensitivity in terms of security purposes, then, hey, albeit turn on network time and leave it alone. Okay, and then you can click the gear box here and add individual host names that you can turn on and add to a pool. We're not going to do that. I'm leaving network time turned off. I'm going to go ahead and leave this for UTC, Coordinated Universal Time. I like the 24-hour clock because it's the easiest way for me to read time, knowing time of day. I don't have to worry about AM, PM. I'll go ahead and click the Done button up here. All right, that was just a single click. Now, we have some situations here. We need to determine what we're going to do with our kdump. This is for kernel dumping. In other words, if applications get a little bit unstable with memory and CPU cores, they want to leave a little bit of a breadcrumb trail with some data in it. Those are called core dumps, and I'm going to turn it off because I don't want them. I'll go ahead and leave that and remove it. Okay, network settings. That's what I usually go to next. I'm hopping all around, but just keep track of the fact that you want to make sure that this is pointing to the media you're using, which is obviously happening for me. Software selection GUI, server with GUI. I will change that later on here in the same video. Security policy, that will allow you to apply certain changes to the system after the software has been installed, the storage has been allocated, the root account has been created, and so on and so forth. And then your extra user, which you don't have to do, but we'll get to that. All right. So I'm going to name my system to match my virtual machine's host name, which is Alma, A-L-M-A. So I'm just going to call it Alma. Short, sweet, to the point. Click the Apply button. Now you see over here, this changed. This is the interface I'm using. I don't have any other interfaces. I'm not really worried about it. Now what I'm going to do is go into Configure, and I'm going to choose IPv6. I don't like using IPv6 or having it even see it. I don't have an IPv6 router or a switch. There's nothing else IPv6 on my network. So why waste the resources of such a configuration? So I ignore it, and that will basically disable it. It'll make it not show up, not get configured. IPv4 settings, I like using DHCP because I have a wireless router in my home. But when my wireless router gives me an IP address, I want to know what machine has what IP. So that's what this DHCP client ID is for. You type in the name here again. Yes, you do, explicitly. And then when the machine is given an IP address, your wireless router at home that's got the DHCP service running on it will know that IP address wasn't assigned to new host name -0-1-2. It was assigned to Alma because that's the name we provided right here in this field. Require IPv4 addressing for this connection to complete? Yeah, I kind of want that to happen, so I'm going to click the checkbox. Right? I'm not doing anything static. I'm not adding any other additional IP addresses manually, so I'll skip that. There's no proxy on my network because I'm, again, at a home network. Maybe you will have a proxy. Then you would make modifications here. Data center bridging is for storage connections and other types of flows. You can see them all listed here. You can configure them. I don't mess with them. I'm, again, home network, so I don't need to worry about it. 802.1x security, again, for wireless security enablement. We're not going to worry about that because it's going to be built into what my router is offering, and I'm not going to try and do any more custom configurations with a radius server and accounts and so on. Ethernet. That's the name of the device. I'm going to leave it as the standards and defaults. That way I don't have any problems, and if I do and I go on the internet and report I'm having a problem on my machine with networking, I kind of want to have a standard nickname. I just want to know what it is, and I want other people to know what it is based on this name. Finally, the General tab. Connect automatically with priority. I do that. Priority 0, it's my only interface. I'm not doing any VPN connections here. So I just checked it by accident. You saw the check marks, and I clicked it again and disabled it. All right, so we click the Save button here. Now we have the network configurations mostly set up. Let's enable this box from off to on. And essentially what we just did was we just plugged in the cable, virtually speaking, into the machine. Whether we enable the interface that the operating system will recognize it and allow data to connect. And you can see it was pretty instant, and you can see I got a 1,000 megabit connection. So great. You can tell my IP address, and that's not looking quite right for my home network. So hopefully we won't have an issue. I'm usually on a 192.168 address, so I'm not sure what 10.02.15 is all about. I'll deal with that later. Again, we'll just press on with this because it's about the installation process, not about the successful completion and have an up and running system beyond that. I click the done button a single time again. All right. Next, security policy here. I like to use the dissysdig. So I click on that so I can get access to this window. I scroll down and I'm going to look for the dissysdig for AlmaLinux 8. Do that and choose this button, select profile. Wait a moment. Now all of these do not enter signs or like, whoa, you need to address this. This says we have to have a separate /home. We have to have a separate /var log, separate partition for var log audit, separate partition for /var, separate one for /boot, /temp, /var temp. And we keep going down and see if there's anything else. And everything else looks so good so far. And then this one, package nfs-utils. If you have any hazards in here that have not been addressed, and you can pop in and out of this screen, we'll show you how to do that. Then when you go to click, not just the done here, but when you go to click the begin installation here, it won't be available. So until we address this, because it's got red text and the hazard symbol, until we address this with a red text and hazard symbol, until we address getting the root password created and a second primary non-root account, we can't enable this begin installation button. So let's move to the next step. What I want to do is set up partitioning to address the first several lines of the security profile that were being flagged. All right, this is the only hard drive I've got. So uncheck it. I'm rechecking it just to make sure it got checked. Scroll down a little bit. I'm going to do custom configuration of the storage so that I can get what I require for /var temp, /temp, /var, /var log, /var log audit, /home, /boot, /home. So let's go ahead and do the custom here. We will scroll back up, hit the done button, and then you're going to get prompted with this window. This is a sub window, basically another phase of the partitioning situation. If you're doing virtualization, most of the time you might want to stick to using LVM. I've experienced recently where I tried using LVM thin provisioning and the amount of storage I needed, the amount of storage allocated was wonky. So sticking to LVM will allow you to allocate the amount of virtual storage you've provided from your virtual environment down to your virtual machine, and then allocate it and have a proper assessment of what you've done. All right, so the next trick, we see that we have 80 gigabytes available and a total of 80 gigabytes space to use. We'll do a plus sign. I'm going to go ahead and choose the drop down here and then move my mouse cursor to /boot. You really only need 512 megabytes, so 512, capital M, lowercase I, capital B. You can just type 512, and the system will know that you mean 512 megabytes, but that's because the units of measure for storage in this window are always megabytes. So if you just provide a numerical value, it's always going to be megabytes. If you want to specify gigabytes, you have to type in capital G, lowercase I, capital B, or maybe capital GB, as you see here in the little pop-up window. All right, so I added one storage point. That's not enough. We got to go back and do a whole bunch more. Let's go ahead and add swap, which is always good to have on a Linux system. I'm going to go ahead and give 1.5 gigabytes. Set capital G, lowercase I, B. All right. I'm going to add another storage point, /home. Don't really need much, so I'll just give it a couple of gigabytes, capital G, lowercase I, capital B. All right. /var. And this is really about just showing you how to set up a system. I'm going to go ahead and give it 8.0 gigabytes. Oh, you know what? Maybe I don't want 8 gigabytes. I can change this. How can I do that? I can change it by highlighting this and putting the amount I want, so I will change it to 10. And then After we do that, we have to do update settings. Scroll down and hit update settings button. And now we see this has been changed. Scroll back up. We can see both sides the way we had it before. Let's do /var/log. So slash is not really what I'm looking for. I'm looking for /var/log. I'm going to go ahead and give it another 10.0 gigabytes. I'm going to quickly rip through these. I'm going to add var log audit. I just typed this time I didn't have to really do a drop down. You don't have to. 10.0 gigabytes again. Notice that this number keeps dropping, okay? We're going to do /var/tmp, and I'm going to allocate 5.0 gigabytes. And we haven't allocated any space for slash or /tmp, so let's go ahead and take care of /tmp. And, you know, good measure might be a couple of gigabytes, just, again, for demonstrating the video. Finally, let's specify slash, because I just typed it. And I don't think we need to really allocate any explicit amount of space. This amount is left over. If I just simply leave this with a cursor blinking in it and click the add mount point, it will consume as much of the space as it can up to the last sector of hard drive. Again, this is virtual, so we're not really too concerned. If you want to encrypt the drive and use the LUKS, L-U-K-S technology for basically doing the equivalent of Microsoft's BitLocker, you would hit the check mark here. But we're not going to do that. I'm going to keep this installation very simple. Okay, so I'm going to click done because I believe I'm done with all the partitioning I need to do. Maybe not, we'll find out. This will take a moment. This is normal. What this is saying is, hey, we have a partition. We didn't know what was on the disk before, but now we're going to wipe it. We're going to put a new partition table on it, new partitions, new LVMs, LVM volume groups, and so on. And you can see by scrolling up and down what we've done. We want to keep them at these changes, so we're going to click on the Accept Changes button over here. There we are. Now, if you notice, this no longer has red text, but this does. All right, so click back in here. And if you notice, all the mount points for /home, var log audit, all of this stuff went from red do not enter signs to, I think those are light bulbs. And let me scroll down and see if we can find the red do not enter sign to figure out what's left over. And yep, it's still the NFS util. So we've addressed the storage issue. Now we need to address the software selection issue. NFS utils is used for NFS clients and other things. So just keep that in mind, that whatever software personality we choose to install on this virtual machine, whether we're treating it like a desktop or a server or whatever, with GUI or without GUI, we need to make sure that if we want this to be compliant with the dissystig, we need to make sure that we choose a software selection that doesn't include NFS-utils. So click on the Done button back here. We go back to the installation summary window. Let's click on the software selection button here. And I don't want to do server with GUI. Let's just simply do plain old server. All right. And for the sake of demonstrating, let me go ahead and just click the Done button here. I kept obviously the selection very simple. You don't have to choose additional software components. Just simply choose server. By doing that, you notice that there's no GUI going to be installed because this one is with GUI explicitly. This one is without GUI by default. I'll click the Done button. Let's see what we get back here. Hey, now we are compliant. Everything's okay in black text. Let's make sure. Scroll down here and look for the very bottom. The very bottom, there's no more concern about the package NFS utils. It has been added to the exclude packages list. All right. So click the Done button. We're back to the installation summary. All of this is good. Let's scroll down here. We will click here and we'll type a very simple password for the sake of this demo. Okay. And if you notice, it says the password is weak. The password I want, again, I want to keep it simple for the sake of this demo. I'm going to click on the Done. And then this shows up here. Pay attention to this. Simply press done again. Now we've got this blacked out. Now this indicates that the user creation, no user will be created, is okay, but I want to create a default non-root user and then add it to the administrator's privilege, basically the wheel group. That's basically called wheel because of the 0. And I'm going to type in my name, and I'm going to accept this for an account name. I'm perfectly fine with that. I'm going to put in a password here. And if you notice, it's still weak, but the green bar is there. I'm going to click the advanced. I'm going to make sure that my user has a specified user ID of 1000 and a specified group ID, GID of 1000. And because we had hit the administrator checkbox in the previous screen, this is automatically here set to wheel. Click Save Changes. Everything looks good. The password fails a dictionary check. That means I used really way too simple a password here and confirmed it. I'm okay with that. Again, this is for a home lab. Click the Done button. Again, press Done again to use password anyway. Click Done. All right, so now we have this big blue button for Begin Installation, and let's see what happens. All right, this is all very normal stuff. Basically, we are provisioning the storage before we can figure out what directories exist and then installing software, because you can't install software until you have an operating system, a file system to put the software packaged files. Preparing transaction from installation source. Now we're actually installing packages right away. There'll be a total of 618 packages based on choosing the software selection of just the plain RHEL option for server. We didn't add anything extra, so 618 will always be the number based on AlmaLinux 8.3 installation from the ISO or from the media. And as you can see, this number is cranking up pretty darn fast already. I'm being quiet because you don't need to hear my voice nonstop, but I'll speak up every once in a while to let you know I'm still here. One thing I just pointed out is that if you saw it on the screen, there was a kernel-core. The package typically called kernel on Red Hat 7, CentOS 7, and there was no AlmaLinux 7. But anyway, any variant of CentOS and Red Hat of major version 7 had a package that was called just plain kernel, with variant the major version 8 for Red Hat and CentOS, and now AlmaLinux exists, and RockyLinux will be existing. It will have a kernel-core for version 8 operating systems. Now, if you notice, we chose the server option without GUI, and the server option without GUI and the option we had chosen will basically not include NFS utils as a package. So that's why by just choosing that, we kept the installation very simple. If you still, as a server, need NFS utilities so you can test client-like connectivity before you start building clients, then you can go back after the installation is complete and do a DNF install NFS-utils. and it will reach out to the repository, or you can do a manual install directly off the media, which requires a little bit of effort. But if you're connected to the internet, you're better off just doing a DNF, that's Delta November Foxtrot, space install, INSTALL, space NFS November Foxtrot Sierra -utils. I'll be quiet a little bit longer. We've about 106 packages to go. Configuring kernel-core. So not installing it, but configuring it. So as you may not know, I'm actually running Oracle VirtualBox, and I had assigned this virtual machine that we're working with 2 gigabytes of base memory. So 2 gigabytes of virtual memory is being used to build this machine. Not tons, but it's certainly quite a bit. And it took us a little while to get to this point, only because I was slowing down enough to speak clearly, point at certain things out, features out on the screen, and make sure that you could see everything that you need to see. I am still here, just we're recording this entire clip to show you what the process looks like from beginning to end, to first reboot, to second reboot, and the second reboot is not necessarily required, but we will show you what that looks like. Because when this machine comes up, there will be no GUI logon. It'll be a text-based login, entirely a black terminal, black background with white grayish text with a prompt that says login, and you would type in your username and password. And for most people who work with Linux and Unix, they know what that will look like in general. All right, so configuring the installed system. Great, we're getting to the very end here. Cranking away. Writing the network configuration that we had told it to use DHCP. We saw that we received an IP address. The IP address was not for the use of installing, but for the use of once the machine reboots, that's the network configuration the machine is supposed to get. And while I'm looking at my virtual machine's configuration, I realized part of the reason why we had a problem with the 10 space address is because the adapter was set to use NAT, and that's actually not going to be appropriate. the setting we want to use is actually called the bridged adapter. We'll deal with that later. You probably can't see that in this recording. But if you make that change on your virtualization environment to use a bridged adapter, then you will get an IP address from your wireless router, if that's what you're dealing with, or your wired-in router if you have a network cable plugged in. And you'll get a 192 address if that's what your network layout is using. Okay, so we came to the very end here. This is the first reboot, so reboot system. We'll click on the blue button. Give it a moment. Machine's rebooting. This is all very normal looking. Stop, 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 which is fine. Now we're going to let the machine reboot. And here is what the first reboot looks like. You're looking at what's called the Grub menu, where you have the rescue item, so you can always have something that works and functions unless the physical or virtual backend of this virtual machine has a hardware damage, so to speak. And then you have this kernel option that will let you boot the actual operating system into your intended targeted environment. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the arrow up. We are on the kernel 4.18.0-240, and we're going to go ahead and hit the enter key to choose this option. Again, the mod probe error could not insert all these different checksum types. These are kind of normal. Okay. And as you notice, the last two lines didn't look too friendly either, but those were fine. What we're dealing with, the machine is going to boot. Let's see what we can get going here. This gray screen with the three dots, two gray and one bright white. That's a little bit normal for AlmaLinux. I don't think you see that with others. And here we are, black background, white grayish text, and the host name space login colon. So I'm going to log in with the root account first, hit enter, and then I'm going to provide the password that I use when I set up the environment. And as you notice, when you're typing, the password doesn't show up on the screen. Great. And now we are in the operating system. Okay, so in the case we want to install NFS utils after all, because we are getting around the disastig by doing the installation afterwards. Again, this kind of flies in the face of the disastig 8 security profile purpose in the first place, but hey, you want to install a server, you want to have NFS utils, but you still want to be very secure as much as possible. So then what you'll do is DNF space install space NFS -utils. Hit the enter key, and you can see it's reaching out to a bunch of mirror hosts that have access to the repository to share the packages, the RPMs that we need. Then it will say, hey, this is what you want to install, and then maybe there's a dependency or not, and do you want to continue? So let's wait and see what happens here in a moment. Getting close to here we go. So if you notice, we got the NFS utils directly under the installing section in bright green. That was our specifically targeted package. And then because of that, NFS-utils has requirements for GSS proxy, requirement for K-utils, requirement for liveverto-live event, and a requirement for RPC bind, which means a total of 5 packages are going to need to be installed. And what we need to do is simply hit the Y key here to say, yes, it's okay to get this stuff installed. So let's see what happens. Hit the Y, hit the enter key, and these packages are being installed. Now the scriptlets that are basically pre-install, post-install, and transcripts are actually being executed for whatever is appropriate. And we're done. We have the machine with all the software installed that we wanted in the first place. We got around a little bit of the dissystig 8 for AlmaLinux, and now we have a fully built machine. For the sake of argument, let's go ahead and do a reboot and see what the reboot looks like in terms of its gracefulness. It shouldn't change anything about the SHA-512 or the SHA-1 checksums that we were seeing, the hash types. Give it a moment. Again, it's black screen. It'll take about 30 seconds or so, and then we should start seeing text again. There we go. This is VirtualBox rebooting. That's like the equivalent to the BIOS. Here is our kernel option. We didn't update the kernel. We just simply installed it and then added NFS utils afterwards. The lfence not serializing, we saw that before. Mod probe errors, we saw that before. Okay. VMW GFX, we saw that before as well. That was one of the things I was pointing out, but I didn't get to see the screen well enough to tell you what it was about. This dark gray with the blocks is what we expect. All right, back to the black background, whitish gray text for the login. Again, I'm going to log in as root because I want to have escalated privilege. A lot of people will tell you not to do that, and I kind of agree with them, especially for tracking purposes with the audit. But there is no actual audit configuration right now, so I'm not really worried about it. Now, the other thing I want to do is show you that you can do DNF group lists, and it should tell you all of the different software options you have to install software packages in very large custom configurations. So if you remember back on the GUI screen in the very beginning of this video, there was an option for minimal install, for server with GUI, or workstation, and so on. Let's go ahead and do server with GUI. So we're going to do DNF, like we did before. I'm going to do group install as one word, space, and anything that has white spaces in the names under available environment groups will require double quotes wrapped around it. So let's go ahead and do the server with GUI installation. Double quote, server with GUI. Same capitalization is required, so just type it exactly as you see it under the available environment groups. It's the very first line. We're going to go ahead and hit the enter key, and it's going to do some metadata checking. Wow, it's a whole bunch of stuff, and it rushed right by. So now we see all the packages and the dependencies and so on, and we're going to go ahead and hit yes to enter. So you say yes, go ahead and do the installation. And now it's downloading at this time. It's not installing, it's downloading these packages so that after all the downloaded packages are done, the machine can continue with the next phase, which is actually installing the packages. If you remember, the first couple of times we rebooted this machine, we had the black background with the whitish gray text that looks exactly like this hue of white text we're looking at scrolling off the top of the screen. When we're done rebooting this, after this installation is completed, we should actually have a GUI graphical user interface for logging into the operating system, so we can have a Windows-like environment. You wouldn't typically install GUI on a server, so just be aware of that. It's not very customary to do something like that. But I just wanted to demonstrate the DNF group install of server with GUI on top of what we've already done by choosing the original profile of server. And as you can tell, we're downloading 186, 187, 188 packages concurrently, now 188, 190, well, the numbers are changing, out of 746. So we've gone roughly 20% of the 746 packages downloaded, and we will have this probably completed in the next 8 minutes or so. You look at the very bottom right corner, you'll see how much time is roughly left for the download. And this is granted totally tied to the amount of bandwidth you have and your network interface connection and whether your internet connection is actually working at its optimal performance. Back up to 751 again in 9 minutes, 8 minutes. So that just goes to show you that my home network has some little issues, but not bad enough to affect the demonstration of how to install AlmaLinux 8 and 8.3 more specifically. So still working on downloading some Google Noto sans serif font types and Firefox 78.10.0 and many other packages to come here in the next 6 minutes or so. If you notice, the Google Noto sans packages listed above the very bottom line are all roughly 19 up to 19 kilobytes up to 190 kilobytes. But that very bottom line is tickering up from 349, 350, 351, 352 megabytes. So that's more than likely the Firefox package that's actually 360 megabytes plus in size. And for whatever reason, it's holding up the Google Noto sans serif font that's in the background there. Nope, it is not. Firefox is only 102 megabytes, so the quantity of megabytes we're downloading is just going to increase until we've downloaded everything. Still not quite 50% through the 746 packages to be downloaded. Tons of packages downloading now, aren't they? Really fast. We've exceeded the 373 packages at the 50% mark, and we've exceeded that mark now. So We're doing pretty well, clipping along pretty nicely. LiveVirt is the virtualization that is offered through the Red Hat, CentOS, Alma, RockyLinux variants. Python 3 is very tightly integrated with the Red Hat 8, CentOS 8, AlmaLinux 8, basically major 8 for any Red Hat variant. And pretty soon I won't be able to use that excuse as a Red Hat variant, but right now, with AlmaLinux being a derivative of CentOS, and CentOS is really a derivative and a variant of Red Hat by association, AlmaLinux is a Red Hat variant. Clipping along pretty nicely, down to the last 10 packages or so, and we should be done here with the downloads, not the installation yet. $728 megabytes were just downloaded. This is all very normal behavior for a DNF or yum installation of packages. Okay, preparing. Now we're running the scriptlets, which is basically means we are installing and setting up and preparing all the dependencies of the environment to make sure that all the packages install successfully. So the SE-Linux policy is very important, so it's taking a while to extract its content and configure it with the running scriptlet. Flatpak. I am still here, just making sure the video continues to run, and hopefully this will complete soon and we can end the video. Getting closer to the midpoint of the 764 packages being installed. And now we have exceeded that amount. That's good. We're more than halfway through the server with GUI updates and installation. All right, so what you'll see is that basically my screen has screensaver without any GUI. So we need to put the password back in to see what's going on with the installation process. All right, so now we're back to being vulnerable. No, we're actually just watching the screen, and we probably had a 5-minute wait there without any interaction with the system. If you're new to Linux, new to AlmaLinux, you'll notice that if you look off to the right, the number indicates 498 of 764, above it's 497, and upward and upward and upward. You'll see that at times you'll see the same number repeated twice, one time for running scriptlet and another time for installing, and not necessarily in that order. In fact, more than likely you'll see installing first, and then you'll see the running scriptlet second. Lots more Python packages. GNOME is a very tightly integrated desktop environment. We did not install KDE. We went with the default of the server with GUI. And if you want to install KDE, you can do that separately later on. You just need to do some research on the internet to find out how did AlmaLinux package as a group installation the KDE environment. How do you install KDE on a machine using DNF space group install. So we're down to the last 65 packages. And I'm getting very excited about the opportunity to reboot the machine and show you what this looks like with GUI installed. Okay. You'll see that deconf error while loading. That's specific to AlmaLinux, and I don't know if anybody else has reported this or not. So it looks like the post-trans script for deconf failed, and that's what needs to be reported. Almost to the end, almost to the end, almost to the very end. Okay, complete. So you see the word complete. If I reboot this machine now, it'll come back up with a black background, white text, terminal login again. But if you want to see the machine boot up with GUI, we have to make sure that because this machine is virtual, there are no video drivers. We're installing like NVIDIA drivers. We're not dealing with a physical machine. What we need to do is set what's called the default target. So we're going to do system CTL. We're going to do get-default to see what it is set to. And multi-user.target means multiple users can log into this machine from across the network, but only one user can log into the terminal at one time. So we want to change it so that it's not going to be the terminal screen, black background, white text, and set it up to use the GUI. We do that by using systemctl set-default. And now what we're going to do is use the term graphical.target. Hit the enter key, and you can see that the link was removed from etc systemd system default.target, and a new link was created for the symlink between the default target pointing to user-lib systemd system graphical.target. Now we can reboot the machine, and we should, in theory, see the GUI. There we go. If you notice in this, on the right-hand side, there's kind of a little bit of an etched in art in the screen. We're going to go ahead and boot up off the same kernel again, because we didn't update the kernel. Again, this is all the normal mod probe stuff that I've been telling you. Don't get too concerned about with this particular 8.3 release. The VMW GFX, that's for graphics. There's an error, it failed to send host log messaging. We're not worried about that right now. Here's our gray, typical gray screen with the 3 square dots in the middle. And if this is working properly, by the time this bright white dot gets from center past the far right dot, we should end up with the logon screen. If you want to see what's going on in the background, you can always hit the escape key, and that should show you what was going on in the background in terms of all the services starting up. And it does look like this black screen is hanging here for quite a while. Be patient. One, there's only 2 gigabytes of RAM assigned to this virtual machine. And secondly, AlmaLinux is just a little bit slower with this part. But hey, voila, we have our GUI login. And you can see my name, Warren French. And if I want to log in with root, I would arrow down to the not listed. You can see it went from light gray to bright white. I'm going to go ahead and log in as myself. Move the blue bar over my name, hit the enter key. Now I've got the prompt, and hopefully this part will work. If this is not an unsuccessful installation. This is a problem distinct to AlmaLinux that I've been experiencing the last couple of weeks. But let's see if we can get in and whether or not I have a broken machine or not. But this is how you would install the software. This is how you install fresh installation. This is how you would set up the machine to reboot with the graphical user interface, showing you all the icons in the upper right corner, networking, audio controls, the battery indicator, and the help options such as, I don't know the properly term, I don't want to be politically incorrect, but I think this is called the handicap features or assisted aider user. All right, so we did actually have a successful installation of the operating system and of the GUI environment, and we are here. This video can come to an end. Thank you for your time.